If you recall, back at the last time we had our study, I think the last formal study session was back in February, when we first brought to the board and the administration team here discussion about the opportunity to bring our operating millage renewal, as well as our hold harmless, which is also another operating millage renewal, to the Board of Education for approval in the upcoming months. Now we're here at this point, to take out to our voters for approval, whether that be in August or November. With the upcoming general election, we do have the opportunity to put a renewal of the operating and the hold harmless millages, which are expiring in December of 2025. So we do have time, but by putting them on the proposal to our voters in August or in November, it gives us the opportunity to save a significant amount of dollars to the school district by getting that on either the primary or the November election. And so we have entered, we've had numerous discussions with our bond counsel, with our financial advisors, PFM, between the Finance and Operations Committee, as well as the Strategic Planning Committee, to put forth a proposal for the August 6th election. So there's two parts of that. It's the renewal of the 18 mil non-homestead operating millage that is on, again, non-homestead property, so not our principal residences, essentially our businesses, rental properties, and such, as well as a renewal, so these are not new tax rates to the community, of our current hold harmless millage, which is currently 5.1338. And that does go to our principal residence, or against our principal resident property. So some history around that. Back in 1994, with the passage of Proposal A, which is the current funding mechanism for school districts in the state of Michigan. All Michigan school districts were expected to levy a non-homestead operating millage of 18 mils to receive their full foundation allowance. So what that means is our foundation allowance, so this year our foundation allowance is $13,443. The target foundation allowance for the state of Michigan is $9,608. We have a difference of $3,835 that is our hold harmless to, that I'll speak to in a moment. But what that means is that we do not receive the entire value of that $9,608 from the state of Michigan. We are required to levy 18 mils on our non-homestead property in order to get receive the full value of that. And in the absence of that levy, or an approval of that levy, we will still not continue to receive the full value of that $9,608. Additionally, with the passage of Proposal A, back in 1994, certain school districts, and when I say certain school districts, are a handful, about 43, I think to be exact, that had combined local revenues, property tax revenues, and state revenues that exceeded the state maximum threshold at that time, which was $6,500 per pupil. And so, and that's Bloomfield, that's us. And so at that time, we were allowed to, again, by voter approval, make up the difference of the revenue by levying an additional local hold harmless millage on our residences. And our community supported that, so that our funding wasn't decreased by essentially $3,835 per pupil. So we have the renewal, because of the law. Although it's part of the formula, we do have to take this millage out to our voters to approve. And that is, going to be expiring in December of 25. We're fine for this fiscal year, but in the absence of putting it forth to our voters now, we will incur significant election costs if we wait. So we're going to take the opportunity to do that. What we are recommending is that, because of the potential for a Headley rollback, so I know a lot of technical language here tonight around this millage, and it is complicated, so I'm doing my best to make it as simple as possible. But under the current Michigan Constitution, A school district is required to reduce its millage when annual growth on the existing property is greater than the rate of inflation. So we have experienced that in the last couple of years, and that's referred to as the Headley rollback. And what that does is it rolls back that 18 mills. And it rolls the rate back permanently. So we don't reset the next year to 18 mills. And in the absence of having some cushion for the Headley rollback, then we are essentially penalized because the state aid formula assumes that we will receive 18 mills. So we do have the ability to levy more, not levy, we have the ability, the authority to request that the maximum mills to the taxpayers be greater than 18 mills. And we are making the recommendation that we will authorize up to 22 mills, but we cannot levy more than 18. And so what that does is it gives us a 4 mill hedge to protect us because the Headley rollback is applied to the 22. So the 22 maybe becomes 21, eventually becomes 20. We're still levying constantly 18 mills so that we receive the full foundation allowance. So based on conversations and analysis with PFM, with our bond counsel, we are making that recommendation, the finance committee, to bring forth 22 mills to our taxpayers. We will levy 18 on our non-homestead, and that 4 mill will be a hedge or a buffer for us. And we are also bringing forth the renewal of our hold harmless millage. Currently, we are authorized up to 11.65 mills. We only levy up to 5.13 in the current year because that is based and all tied into our current per pupil allotment. So we can only levy up to the equivalent of our current per pupil count multiplied by that 3,835 and then back into that rate. And so the equivalent of that this year is 5.13. However, we are approved up to currently right now 11.65, and then we are going to bring to the taxpayers actually a reduction in that maximum allowability to 9.65. We recognize that that isn't necessarily, that's more cushion than we need, and so we'll bring that down by 2 mills. And so that is the recommendation that we are bringing to tonight so that we can have that ballot language submitted to the county clerk in a timely manner to get that on the August election. I should mention that combined, the two sources of revenue does bring $34.3 million of local source operating funds to our general fund. That is 31% to the school district's operating revenue fund budget. Very significant, very material, and in the absence of that passing would require would require material changes to our educational program to our students because we do rely on a significant of dollars from these 2 millage renewals.
Wow.
I know it's a lot.
Do you have that all typed out, or that was all just?
You know, I've said it so many times, but I did make some speaking points today just to make sure that I articulated it the right way. I reviewed it with the bond counsel. They said, "You've got it." Okay. All right.
So will you also be clarifying what that cost would mean to a taxpayer?
To the cost to the taxpayer. So it is essentially just a renewal of the current cost to the taxpayer right now. We haven't gone through an actual calculation of using an example like homeowner value of, say, $200,000 of taxable value, but certainly as part of our campaign and the information that we share out, and we'll be partnering with our community, our communications director, Karen, community service, not community service, our communications director, Karen, and her fantastic team after the board meeting. I mean, we're going to pivot into an immediate communication out to our community members and our parents, and then as part of that information and the FAQs around that, we can absolutely put some examples of what is that, some illustrative tax rates in there. I think that would be helpful.
Do we plan to have it outreach the community over the next months before the August election?
Yes.
Yes. Karen's already on top of a timeline for us and holding us to it, so. Yes.
And we can talk about that too in our strategic planning subcommittees.
Any other dialogue on that? Thanks for bringing that to our attention to bring that up.
And this will be a voting item today in board business.
I think it's also, and thank you for illustrating that this is not an increase. I think that's what folks really want to know. At least me.
It is not an increase. It is simply, it's a current tax that we've had since 1994. Our voters have supported, and that's just a continuation. And I will mention too, we are bringing it forth. We do have the ability as a school district to bring that forth for a 20-year period so that we are not bringing this to our taxpayers every 5 or 10 years and giving that. We are comfortable that with that 4 mil buffer, that should protect us from the Headley rollback for about 15 to 20 years, and we may have to revisit it down the line, but something that we don't have to necessarily incur election fees in our budget to do that. And so that was the recommendation as well of our bond council to put it out there. Some of our neighboring districts have just passed, I know that Rochester just passed their renewal. It's on Troy's ballot too for August 6th, and also for a stretch of time, just so that we're not constantly going through this process to renew that.
So, has it been, in the past, was it renewed more often?
We had so this has been a 10-year, so this particular rate right now is expiring, and that was taken to the voters 10 years ago. We got very close to so I will say we had a maximum authority of up to 20 mils, so we had a 2 mil buffer at the time. And we got very close to that Headley rollback a few years ago. So when the prior leadership was here, it did actually go out to our community for a short period fix or Band-Aid, if you will, of an additional 2 mil hedge. So that's where that 22 is essentially derived from the 20, and then adding that 22 to get us to the 10-year mark comfortably. Now, based on the history, PFM has did some analysis of over the past 10 to 15 years about making some assumptions if the rollback was 99%, if the rollback was 98%. We don't know that. I don't even have the rollback percentage if there is one this year yet from the county. But gave us various scenarios. So the greater the rollback, we have shorter period. We get closer to 10 to 15 years. And if we're closer to that 99% rollback, then we get closer to 15 to 20 years. So we didn't want to be in the same situation of necessarily having approval for 10 years, but going out to our voters again in 7, if it is, depending on what happens with inflation and our property tax values. So we're making the recommendation for the 20, and if we do get close to that rollback, then we may have to pivot again and make a change.
You said, when is this expiring?
Technically, it's December of 2025, so we levy our taxes. We have a 50-50 summer levy and winter. So those rates will come to the board for official approval during the June budget adoption and our public hearing as well. And we will start preparing the draft tax rates that will go out for the 24-25 fiscal year. That is all still under our current rates. But if we wait and don't take this to our community in August or November and do a special election, say next February, we would be in a position that we would have to incur significant dollars, upwards of $100,000, $150,000 to get on the ballot to do a special election. So it's a cost avoidance by doing it now.
Thank you.
Moving on to Section D, request to approve resolution certifying operating millage renewal proposal.
I move the Board of Education to approve the resolution placing a ballot proposal on the general election of August 6, 2024, which Bloomfield Hills Schools voters will be asked to renew the operating millage as presented.
Second?
Any discussion?
Do we want to present this one or no?
We discussed this at the study session, I think, in quite a bit of length. Anyone have any other?
It's also
Unless- did
recorded
you-
for anyone that's interested.
Yes, please, say that part, yeah.
Yes. So anybody watching who would like to hear further dialogue on this, we had it at the top end of this meeting, which began at 6 p.m., which was also live streamed and is recorded, and we went into a great discussion in great detail about this topic. So thank you, Candice, for all of the detail you were able to provide us on that.
Great.
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0.